Comment on
Please.
braces.
Yeah, we didn't start yet.
I know, on braces, which we're.
Yeah, which we're going to starting tonight. We're doing bracious, and we're going to get we're going to do a duo tonight. Bracious and yeah.
God created the earth as the center of everything, but yet we know that the earth revolves around the sun. So he said that, and also in the commentary it said that people often worship the heavenly bodies, the moon and the sun,
Right.
but yet we're the center of everything. So
Well, it's a philosophical center of everything. Obviously, I don't know if you'd measure the universe in space that the Earth would be in the center of the universe. I have no idea, but we're certainly the philosophical center. That means in terms of what Hashem created for, we are the center of the universe. And that's what we'll talk about today a little bit. So, okay, so we have we're going to do a dual parsha. We got because we missed last week due to the holidays, so we are going to try and do Pasrshas and Noach together. And obviously, we'll not going to do full justice to any one, but we'll try and do them both together. So first, the question we're not going to be dealing with, because that's the question we can't deal with tonight is the age of the universe, which happens to be a very important question because we ask people to believe what the Torah says, and if they have a hard time believing the beginning of the Torah, it's hard for them to believe I should put on tefillin or keep the Sabbath or not speak lashon hara. So we're not going to do that topic tonight. I'll leave that for the scientists to debate. But just two very quick possibilities for you to consider, just to do what we call permission to learn. This is not yet permitted because you can do this. One answer is, and it's a self-evident answer. It's almost so self-evident, it's almost amazing that there is a question. And that is, that Hashem created an old universe. I mean, it's very, very simple. Because if Adam and Chava looked up, they saw the stars. But you can't see the stars unless the light has been traveling for billions of years. So clearly, he created an old universe. We couldn't see the stars unless light has been traveling for billions of years. So clearly, the universe is an old universe. So Hashem snapshotted an old universe into being, so that all the processes for us to live are already in there. So that's the easiest, simplest answer. It doesn't answer all questions, but it kind of shoots most questions right out of the water about the age of the universe. Second possibility. And by the way, the second proof that I have to this is that Adam and Chava were married. Right, so when Adam proposed to Chava, he had to give her a diamond ring. So therefore, there would be no diamonds unless it was an old universe, right? Because obviously, even though we don't have this from tradition, we know this from obviousness. Chava walked around like this. So if she didn't have a ring, there would be no reason to walk around like this. So no, all jokes aside, that's answer number one. And to me, that's just it's a simple answer, but it has to be true. To whatever degree it's true, it's true. Others are more sophisticated in an approach. I don't know if it's more sophisticated or more worried about the question. And I'll just refer you to one book to read on your own. And that's called Genesis and the Big Bang by Gerald Schroeder, who posits a very interesting possibility that there's because time is relative. From God's point of view, it could be 7 days, right. But from our point of view, it could be billions of years. Yeah. Right. So therefore, he posits that. I am not a scientist. I don't know how that would or wouldn't work once you play it out. But I do know some very, very smart people who read that book and thought it was a very persuasive argument. So I recommend that book to you. If the question actually bothers you and you really want to get into the question, I recommend the book Genesis and the Big Bang. That's the question we're not going to get into tonight, but you have to address it. You can't not address the question. But what I do want to address is the first pasuk in the Torah. First pasuk in the Torah starts off Bereshis bara Elokim. In the beginning, Hashem created Eser Shemayim v'Yasaris, the heavens and the earth. So the question is, and many people address this question. They first Rashi and Chumash addresses this question as to why the whole beginning of the Torah has to be there at all. Torah is what? It's not intended to be a storybook. Wonderful history of the Jewish people. It's a book of law. Torah are the teachings. And we need to know those very important stories about the formative people of the Jewish people. So put that in the Medrash. Many of the stories we know only come from the Medrash, not from the written Torah itself. So put the whole beginning of the Torah and start off with the first mitzvah, the first communal mitzvah in the Torah, which is the mitzvah of the sanctification of time, the Kiddush HaChodesh, lunar calendar, etc., etc. Start off that way. Don't start off with the first verse. You don't need the whole beginning of the Torah in a book of law. So that's the question that's asked, and Rashi asked this question. So one answer given to this question, even though clearly others reject this as a necessity, but in my mind it opens up a tremendous discussion. And that is, Bereshis in the beginning of what? In the beginning. In the beginning of what? It's not like once upon a time, like a fairy tale. In the beginning is in the beginning of what? So we know that the word in the beginning means in the beginning of everything. That's what it teaches us. That there was nothing before. Now what's nothing? Nothing is not nothing. Nothing is nothing. Nothing to most people means, well, you walk into an empty room, there's nothing in there. So the universe, before God populated it, was an empty room. No, there was not even an empty room. It's inconceivable to the human intellect that nothing literally means nothing. Not a vacuum, there was nothing. We can't encompass that. And why is that important to know? Bereshis is the beginning of everything Hashem created. That was the beginning. There was no time, no space, no dimensions, no nothing. No nothing. And which generally what I do not know is nothing. Or I do know is nothing. So there is no nothing. So what is that important for us to know? Why do we have to know the concept of that before Hashem engaged in creation, there was nothing? So the Rabbi Maimonides teaches us that this is one of the principles of the classic principles of Judaism, the principle of ex nihilo, that the world was created something out of nothing. Actually, it was a Latin phrase. In Hebrew, it's called yesh me'ayin, something out of nothing. You all mean the same thing. Something out of nothing. That means there was nothing before. So the question we have to address is, why do we need to know there is nothing? There was nothing. What's the importance? Who cares? How many angels dance on the head of a pin? Oh, it's very interesting, but it's not relevant. No, evidently this is relevant. This must be like something very, very important, that Hashem had a reason for creation. Now we know, and this is the other question we're not dealing with in depth tonight, even though it's inevitable as part of the discussion, that there's a reason why God created. The reason we know that Hashem created, in the classic words of the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, is derech hatov lehetiv. The good does good. The good does good. That's what good does. So therefore, if Hashem created something out of nothing, and we also have another understanding of Hashem that he needs nothing, that means that the reason he created was only pure, unadulterated chesed, pure, unadulterated kindness. If there was an already existing matter, the Aristotelian philosophy, there's no imperative to say that Hashem created out of pure love. Like a painter. A painter doesn't create out of love. He creates out of wanting to show his smarts or his genius or his talent. And maybe he wants people to enjoy it as well. But it's not an act of unadulterated, pure chesed. So therefore, when Hashem created, because he created, the way of the good to do is to do good. And there was nothing before. That means creation was an act of pure altruism, because Hashem needs nothing. So everything is based on his altruism. Now why is that important? Because that's an Hashem we can relate to. He didn't create because he had an urge to create. He didn't create for any other reason other than the fact that yearns is the right word, that he does good. And that's an Hashem we can have a relationship with. So the first step is, why did Hashem create? And the yesh me'ayin, something out of nothing, es nihilo, addresses that, and then Hashem created because he is good, and therefore his goodness is evidenced by the fact he created out of nothing, because then it's pure altruism, because we know Hashem doesn't need anything anyways. So therefore it's an act, everything that there is nothing that is not in this existence that is not pure altruism, pure kindness, and that is a Hashem we can relate to. That's a relatable Hashem, that his goodness is something we can feel and touch. So the first of the tripod of answers that we will have to the question of why Hashem created yesh me'ayin, something out of nothing, is the first of the statement of why Hashem created. Hashem created because the way of the good good does good. So that's the first one. The second one is that this is Rav Hirsch's posits as follows. He says that the reason why Hashem created something out of nothing, why that is an imperative, is because part of what we know is that human beings have choice, which is the second part of the tripod. Hashem created the ultimate, the good does good. The ultimate good doer does the ultimate good. The ultimate good is earned good, not given good. We've gone through this many times. Therefore, the ultimate good giver has to give earned good. Ergo, there has to be bechira, there has to be free choice. Because we have to have the right to earn the good. If choices aren't free, that you are what you are based on genetics or nature or nurture, so then you don't have choice. So therefore, the second part of the tripod is the greatest do-gooder. The Hashem is good. The good does good. First part. First reason for yesh me'ayin. Second reason, the greatest good giver has to do the greatest good. The greatest good is earned good, not given good. Therefore, there has to be free choice and we should earn it. What does it have to do with ex nihilo? Ex nihilo, something out of nothing means when Hashem created me, He didn't create me out of the best available. He created me out of the best. Which means that I can never say that my roots of my creation came from bad stuff. The reason why I'm bad to the bone is because I was created from bad stuff. And the reason why you're such a good guy is because you were created from good stuff. You never had any choice. You're just a good guy. Why? Because you were created from good stuff. So because you were created from such good stuff, you don't have a choice to be bad. So that would only fly if Hashem created out of the best available. But if He created out of the best, then we know that the roots of our being give rise to the possibility of our free choice.
That's a great bumper sticker. I was created out of good stuff.
No, but not out of the good stuff, not out of the best available, right? But out of the best. I mean, it's an amazing difference. So Rabbi Hirsch posits that this gives rise to our understanding of the true bechira, the true free choice that we have. So the second reason of the tripod of why the first verse begins yesh me'ayin Pasrshas in the beginning of everything, literally in the beginning, Hashem created, is the second reason. It teaches we have in fact have free choice. The third part of the tripod. What's the third? What's the second part? What's the third part of the tripod? Third part of the tripod is the greatest good giver. The good does good. The greatest good giver does the greatest good. The greatest good is earned good, not given good. What is the good that we hope to earn? The right to experience Hashem is the good we hope to earn. How do you experience Hashem? By mirroring Him. So the more we can become God-like, obviously as human beings, the more we'll be able to experience Him not only in this world but in the next world, because that's what happens to us there. So the third part of the yesh me'ayin tripod is that if Hashem created us out of nothing, we owe Him everything. And therefore, we can have the possibility of knowing that we owe Him everything, therefore we can mirror His unity. Remember, we always thought, we'll get to this next week about what defines the Jewish people. We always about the definition of the Jewish people and what Hashem was looking for. Initially, as we'll talk in a few minutes tonight also, that Hashem would have wanted the whole world to be Jewish. We want to literally, I want to show this. And that means the whole world would have been unified in service of Hashem. And because that's what Judaism should be, the unity of self in service of the unity of Hashem. But if I don't owe Him everything, maybe I'll hold back some for myself. So if Hashem created out of stuff that was already in existence, I don't owe Him everything, because He got a discount. He didn't have to create the wood. I don't owe Him everything. But if He created something out of nothing, then I owe Him everything. And I have a greater possibility of giving the unity of self over to mirror His unity. So for the first pasuk, it appears to me, is vital, at least that's the first pasuk, in order to teach us the tripod of yesh me'ayin, something out of nothing, which is born from the flow of why God created. God, the good does good. The greatest good giver has to. The greatest good which is earned good. What do we hope to earn? The ability to experience the unity of Hashem. The best way to experience that is to become more like Him. Become more like Him by the more you're willing to give. If you don't think you owe Him everything, you're less likely to give Him everything. Therefore, the third part of the tripod is that yesh me'ayin, something out of nothing means you owe Him everything. Okay? That's introduction number 2. The first introduction that we weren't going to talk about, the aging universe. The second introduction, we weren't going to talk about why Hashem created, we just did. The third introduction is that we were going to talk about is the concept of yesh me'ayin, which is so vital. People, there goes those Jews, talking about all sorts of philosophical, wonderful ideas that don't mean anything. But here you can see they translate into definition of purpose and what we're supposed to do. However, most people still learn, Rashi, for instance, still does not understand there was a necessity of the first verse for that reason. Again, that could have been even taught to us by the corollary sources, or Abraham came to that realization through intellectual reasons, so he could have come to that place anyways. So Rashi brings the famous quote, from Rabbi Yehuda, I think it is. Rashi brings that the reason why the Torah begins with Bereshis, the beginning, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. So Rashi brings that the reason is, and this is an astounding Rashi, that because when Hashem wants to give Israel to the Jews, nobody has a right to complain because the whole world belongs to Him.
Right. I've read that.
In the beginning, so therefore, it's amazing. So the first verse in the Torah is for no other reason than to convince the rest of the world that God can give us Israel. It's an astounding Rashi. It's too bad that our Ishmaelite cousins don't read Rashi script. They only learn the regular script. They don't read the Rashi script. So I think in part of our reaching out to the masses is to teach them how to read Rashi. Because that Rashi tells us that Hashem gave Israel to the Jews because the whole world belongs to Him. But those are the two answers you'll find about why the Torah begins with the races. But it does beg the question. Because then just start off at the beginning, Hashem created heaven and the earth. Then He has the right to give us Israel. Skip the rest. You want to tell us the stories of Abraham and Sarah? Put that in the Medrash. It's equally true, but you don't need it in the Torah. And then start off with mitzvahs. The Torah is primarily a book of mitzvahs. Start with mitzvahs. Why have all the rest of this stuff? So this is one of the great.
I think it's because people had to believe it, and God had to make the human being believe in the reason He gave us the Torah and everything.
Okay,
that He created the world. He created people. That's my opinion.
I won't have any argument with you. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I think because we're human and we need to know sources and where we came from. That's a straightforward answer, and I have no argument with it.
Yeah.
How did the free will come
How did it come in?
in? Yeah.
Because if Hashem wants us to earn the right to experience Him, we earn it by doing good. You can only earn it by doing good if you have free will. If you don't have free will, if you're born good, you don't earn anything by being good. Right? But there is another possibility as to why the Torah starts off with all the stories. The book of the word Bereshis, Bar Elokim, that we know. So let's look, forgetting the sin of Adam and Chava, which those of you who might remember, which I barely did, but we did talk about that on Rosh Hashanah. After Adam and Eve got the boot from the Garden of Eden, human beings took a huge, a 1,000-year trip, or almost a 2,000-year trip into perdition. And there are 3 events in the Torah which tells us about it. The first event is, here we actually get into the Parsha. How do you like that? First event is Cain killing Hevel. And these are all 3 changed the earth. All 3 changed the way the humankind would proceed. Cain killed Hevel. He killed literally 1/2 of the human population. I mean, maybe some of the kids were born around, but generally speaking, he wiped out. Now, I'm not on the Cain defense committee, believe me, but we have to little understand what he was. Can you imagine how hurt he actually was? I mean, he was the firstborn, big man on campus, right? He was supposed to be the leader in matters of religiosity. That was and all that was taken away from him. So he was tremendously hurt. Not to justify what he did, obviously, but yeah, we want to look at it from his point of view. What motivated him? I don't know what, but he was tremendously hurt by what happened. So he goes out and he kills Hevel. That's the first downfall of humanity. The second downfall of humanity was, we'll go into this a bunch more later, but the second downfall was the Jewish people, not the Jewish people, the world began to act in all sorts of immoral facets, and Hashem brought the flood and wiped out the world. That's a major change in human condition. A few years after that, I'm not sure I should have the amount of years after that, but a few hundred years after that, the world gathered together to build the Tower of Babel. And at that point, Hashem made, however he did it, it's an interesting discussion exactly what Hashem's mechanism was, but he made communication difficult and people had to separate. And that also changed the world. The 3 steps in the downfall of humankind. I just want to spend one more minute on we went into the Pasrshas of Noach too. I'll give you an example of how language can become separatory, and that is once it becomes subjective. There's objective language and there's subjective language. The only objective language ultimately is Hebrew, because their words mean exactly what they're supposed to, not modern Hebrew. Every other language is objective. And I'll give you one example. Just one example. There's a whole bunch of them, but just one. For instance, in Latin and even in English, the word for religion is religion. What does religion mean in Latin? It comes from a Latin word called religare, which means to be bound. That's an subjective description of what religion does to you. And how horrid a description it actually is. In Judaism, in Hebrew, there is no word for religion. Because it's what we are. And it's not something that's imposed upon us, that binds us. It's what we are. So think about, in an objective language, there is no word for the binding by religion. In a subjective language, that which binds you, even if you believe it's for a moral good, it's binding you. A whole different. So this is an example. So once Hashem allowed subjectivity to creep into language, people began to separate because the different points of view changed their language. That's one way. Maybe it was just a miracle. They didn't understand each other. However you want to understand it is fine. But nonetheless, that was the third thing. What was the causative of these 3 things? So we know that Cain killed Hevel because he was jealous. He was jealous of the honor that Hashem accorded Hevel by accepting his offerings instead of Cain's offerings. I'll explain a little bit about his motivation, but nonetheless, he was jealous. Now, second thing, what happened by the flood? What happened by the Mabul? The Torah starts off in the narrative at the end of the portion of Bereshis. The Torah starts off the narrative with Vayara Hashem, that Hashem saw ki rabas ro'as ha'adam, that man had become very evil. A little bit before that, it says, Vayu b'nei Elokim, that the daughters of we'll use this straightforward explanation of the verse. The daughters of the princely people saw the daughters of the rest of the people. The men of the princely people saw the daughters of the regular people, and they grabbed whoever they wanted. And Hashem says, this isn't what I wanted. Lo yad and ruchi, it's not what I wanted. And then Hashem saw ki rabas ro'as ha'adam ba'aretz, that man was evil throughout the land. And the formation of thought in the human mind was evil all the time. And Hashem changed his mind about what he had created. We'll talk about that later. And he decided to destroy the earth. So when it started off with desire. The downfall started with the unleashing of human desire. And then they began to steal and rob, because anything they wanted, they took. But the downfall, the Torah clearly tells us that the downfall of humankind, or the flood, was the negativity was unleashed by human desire. So Cain killed Hevel because of kinna, because of jealousy, and the flood came because of human desire. Which a little bit more, it takes a little bit of a deeper analysis. This is very, very difficult. What was the sin by the Mabul? We can talk about that a lot. Actually, what there's a sin by the Migdal Bava, the Tower of Babel. What is the story? The story tells us the end of portion of Noach. The story tells us the world, or a substantial part of the world, however you want to understand it, gathered together as one unified nation, as one unified people, a united nations. The only thing they didn't have was the Jewish people to hate. Right? So they actually were united. They usually united around the hate of the Jews. But they had a united nations of people, and they got together to unite to progress civilization as one nation. Now, what's wrong with that?
Well, the commentary
We'll get to first absorb the question, then I'll add the answer. Now, a matter of fact, you can learn, to make the question a little stronger, that they learned from the mistakes of the generation of the flood. The generation of the flood was very self-centered. They would steal, they would violate, whatever they took, whatever they wanted. They were very, very self-centered. So they said, we're gonna make a paradise, a workers' paradise. We are going to have everybody join together, all resources for the common good. And really, they were socialists. Right? They were socialists. So communists, whatever brand, however you want to define it. As a matter of fact, the Nimrod, who was one of the heads over there, his nickname was Karl Marx. I don't know if you saw that in the commentary. But nice Jewish boy. This is what they gathered together. We'll pool our resources for the common good, and we're going to build a wondrous civilization. So you can learn that they even took Musar, they took ethical rebuke from the sin of the Mabul.
Right.
So what was their sin? Now, one of the great commentaries, in a very witty phrase, says, what they did was like a short person who decides to sleep widthwise on the bed to make himself feel taller. It's the same person. He just changed direction a little, makes himself feel taller. That's the way he describes what they did. But what did they do wrong now? Please, go ahead.
They wanted to build a tower higher than the heavens so that they could struggle with God.
Okay, so you can get you're bringing an excellent what brought down like that in the commentaries, but that's already and I have no argument with it because it's brought down. That's one of the reasons, but there's a build up to that. In other words, the build up is as follows, and that is that the Hashem had a few times in history where he wanted to give the Torah to humankind. The first time the commentaries bring that he wanted to give the Torah to humankind was around the time of the flood. And there was a shefa, an emanation of wisdom, that had the people used it, they would have been able to grow enough to be able to be worthy of receiving the Torah. One of the reasons why the Mabul, the flood, was water, because Torah is similar to water, and therefore because they didn't actively refuse the Torah, but by their actions they refused moral good. Therefore, they were punished by water. That's one of the prid pro quos, a little bit subtle, but nonetheless there. The second time the sources bring that Hashem wanted to give the Torah to the world, because remember, in theory, it's far better to have the whole world mirror the unity of Hashem, because that's more of a reflection of his unity, obviously, than to have just one nation take that mission. So one would suspect that would be better, or at least they should be given the chance. Which is why perhaps they were also given the chance at Sinai to accept Torah again, in order that there can be a united nation serving Hashem. But, so what happened by the Migdal Bavel? Hashem sent a different shafa, a different emanation, the emanation of unity. By Sinai, if you remember, when the Jewish people accepted Torah, the Jewish people had to accept Torah. The Vayichan Ha'am Neged Ahar, they camped opposite the valley, opposite the mountain. Ish Echad B'Lev Echad, one man, one heart. And we learned, when we talked about the giving of the Torah, that had there been a single Jew who rejected it, maybe the Torah wouldn't have been given. Because the Torah had to be accepted by a unified nation who would reflect, or agree at least in that moment of time, to reflect the unity of Torah and the unity of Hashem. If there'd be one puzzle piece missing, they couldn't accept the Torah. So therefore Hashem sent here a shefa, a unification shefa, an emanation of unification, which the people felt. And they had a choice. And their choice was to use it to unify, to search for the national moral good. And what they chose was to build, and I used to use this word, and I was reluctant to use it, but I think it's probably a good metaphor. They used it to build a World Trade Center as a monument to their own greatness. So they took the shefa of unity, which was given to them to become holy, and they used it for self-aggrandizement. and then the commentaries take it the next step. Some learn, this is and you can learn in the verses, and this is part of the problem, that you could see it in the verses actually, because the Torah talks about the bricks, how much they love their bricks. Yeah. And the Medrash brings that if they were building this tower and a brick would fall and shatter, oh no, a brick shattered, a person fell and died, okay, get a replacement person. So there was no one for all and all for one. It was this tower which became what was important, this grandization of their own civilization. And by the way, as a total aside, this is just so interesting. We all familiar with the story that Abraham, before the Tower of Babel, was thrown into a kiln, the furnace.
Yeah, but
That was by Nimrod.
Yeah.
Nimrod also was the leader of the building of the Tower of Babel, and the kiln in which they fired their bricks
Right.
was the same kiln in which they had thrown Abraham. Just one of those interesting
Yeah,
little
yeah,
nuances
yeah.
of history. It's a jaw-dropping note of history almost. But nonetheless, so they take what you're saying, so take what I'm saying, for instance, that they made a monument civilization. The next step they go is that they wanted it as a scientific idea that they could defeat anything through science. Why? Because there was a flood, so we built this tower high enough. We'll be and strong enough with a big enough base we can withstand any flood. So what they were putting their belief in science rather than in Hashem and using what He gives you. We also can trust the doctor, obviously, but it has to be that we understand that they're the messenger of Hashem. But they put all their faith in science. Some take it to the step you take it to, that they actually wanted to do it as a way to battle against God. And there's one commentary written about 800 years ago, which I found fascinating, that said they weren't building a tower, they were building a teva hapareach ba'avir. A teva, which is a boat, hapareach, which flies in the heavens. They were building a spaceship. This is 800 years ago, I kid thee not.
Wow.
Written a teva hapareach ba'avir, a teva that floats in the air. Airplane, spaceship, that's what they were building. But anyway, whatever the case may be, we don't have any evidence that they actually had the technology, but that's what he says. Just, again, a historical curiosity. But nonetheless, so what you said is correct, but that's on the way up. So what drove them? What drove them was kavod, honor. Our civilization deserves the honor of building a World Trade Center. And by the way, their sin was less than the sin of the Mabul, obviously, because they were just dispersed, not wiped out. You see, the unity itself has value. But they misused it, so they had to disperse, not be killed like by the Mabul. What's the point of this narrative? The point of this narrative is that Torah, what the Torah is trying to teach us is there's such a thing called midos, human personal characteristics. Torah is different from any other study, anything else. Torah is totally different. Why? Because you could be a professor in college in any subject. Even sadly Torah. But you can be a shmo bagel person. It doesn't affect your knowledge of your subject at all. Brilliant mathematician, brilliant physicist, author, and be a shmo bagel of a person. And you probably have heard a lot of people like that. Because that knowledge, your personal characteristics doesn't affect your knowledge whatsoever. Torah is different. If you want Torah as a holy thing, you have to be a vessel to be able to accept Torah. If you pour Torah into a cracked vessel, the Torah just flows out. It might stay in the brain a little bit, but it doesn't change anybody. So the vessel that accepts Torah has to be a pure vessel. What's a pure vessel? A pure vessel, a whole vessel, a vessel that has good personal characteristics. I just was reading this today. This is just something so interesting, just a total aside, as to when you're looking for a shidduch, or when you're looking for a shidduch for your kids, what do you look for? So obviously the basic religious common denominators have to be there. But it's like, I want a millionaire, I want a great genius, or I want this scholar, that. The first 10 things you look for are personal characteristics. Is the person a mensch? If the person is mensch, man or woman,